Okay, now I'm going to go through the editing menu. When I want to edit a picture in Adobe Bridge, I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to hit this button here, Open in Camera Raw. Now remember, you never want to double click. If I double click, it opens it up in Photoshop, and not that you can't edit photos there. This is just a much more simple way to edit photos, and everything that I need is right here. Now there's two different menus in here. Actually, there's lots of different menus in here. Each one of these is a different menu. So these are my basic camera edits, tone and curve. We won't use all of those. Detail, we will use the HSH grayscale. Sometimes I use the FX menu. And that's about it. This up here is your histogram. You generally want a nice sloping curve. If you get too much to one side or the other, if you're too much to one side, like this is all lit up here and you can see this line over here, it'll pull up warning signs on your picture like this. That just sort of means that these spots, when it reads red like this, it's telling you that there's too much white in that spot. If I really wanted to get rid of it, I could pull my whites down to get rid of that. All that means is if I were to print this image out on a printer, that it would not disperse ink in those areas where those red warning signs are there. So would that be a problem? Maybe not. If I was looking at the image from the side, you can sort of tell where there's no ink on a printed image, but that's all that means. So it's just a warning sign to tell you that things are too bright or too dark. Okay, I'm going to bring this back up to where it was. Okay. All right, so let's look at the basic menu. So when I'm in the basic menu, every single one of these things, temperature, tint, exposure, contrast, highlights, so on and so forth, all the way down, applies to everything all over this entire photo. Temperature is just that. It can, warm or cool your photo. And again, if I just want to go back to basic, I just put 0 in here. Tint, you can see which way it would go. If I slid it one way, it would be more green. The other way, it would be more magenta. Exposure is the brightness or darkness of the entire photograph. So sometimes if you take a photograph, you may get something that's underexposed or overexposed, and so that you would correct for that right here. Contrast, you can see on the slider here these little marks of gray. So if I slide all the way over to the left, my photo sort of dulls out and gets a little bit more gray. If I slide all the way to the right, it gets really high contrast and pulls all those grays out. So I do like to add a little bit of contrast to mine, not too much. You never want to over edit your photos. Highlights, anything that the computer reads or the program reads as a highlight, it will make those highlights brighter or darker. And in this one, it's not too much of a dramatic change. You can see it if I turned on this part of my histogram, it would definitely show up there, okay? So again, I don't really need to make highlights there, and I don't want to see that. Blacks, anything it reads as, oh, did I do that one? Highlights, shadows. Anything that it reads as a shadow in here, it makes shadows darker or lighter, okay? Pretty self-explanatory. Whites, anything it reads as whites, it brightens them. Anything or darkens your whites. Grays them out. And you can see that on the slider, okay? Blacks, anything it reads as a black in here, so these areas up in here, it'll either make them darker or more gray. So I could pull them really, really dark. But watch my histogram. By the way, you have to keep your eye on that. So if I were to pull this in here, now what the blue means is, you can tell in the picture, it's just too much black. If I were to print out an image like that, it would super saturate the paper with a ton of black ink, and you don't want that either. Clarity is pretty much the amount of detail that's in your picture. If you soften it up, it gets super, super soft. I don't know. You have to be careful with that one. This clarity is what you use when you're making high definition photos and you want to make it look really defined and everything. With something like this, I think if you increase the clarity, it gets too detailed and too confusing. So maybe in an image like that, I might even soften it a little bit. Vibrance, you can tell from the sliders that these are all about color. So vibrance is the brightness of the colors that are in your photo. I'm going to set these back, by the way. And saturation is how thick those colors are on. And you can see up here too in the histogram, like when I really boost those up, it really messes up your histogram. So you got to be careful with vibrance and saturation. So that's your basic menu. I'm just going to leave it at that. And then the next video will be all some of the other tools that you can use in here.